This episode is brought to you in part by
Hello and welcome to the People Chronicles Storied Women. My name is Annarose Ingarra-Milch and I am your host. I am also the author of Lunch with Lucille. Lunch with Lucille is a story of how one woman's life impacted another woman. And so what we do here at Storied Women is we bring women from our community to share their story so we can understand how they took an adversity in their life and made it an advantage. So today my guest is Stacey Jordan. Welcome,
Hello.
Stacey.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you being here. Now, the first question we always ask our guests here is, what is it that you want the takeaway to be from our chat?
I think the thing that I would like people to take away from our chat is that people should not be ashamed of sharing their story. You never know in life when you might be telling your story to the person who needs to hear it the most, and how that might inspire them moving forward.
Oh, I guess like the People Chronicles is the place for you to be then today, because that's exactly what we do. I mean, and I think that a lot of us hold things in. Perhaps we don't want to share it because we're afraid of being judged or we're embarrassed or whatever it is.
Yes.
But we do want to. But it is very important to share our story. So if you could be that adventurer for the day and
Sure.
share and be willing to share your story, we would appreciate that.
Sure. So I'll share part of my story.
It's part of your story.
In 2015, I lost my son Brandon to an heroin overdose. It was Christmas Eve, and it was a really difficult, well, it's difficult anytime, but then on Christmas Eve, it even made it more difficult. I think that sharing that information with people sometimes stuns them. They aren't expecting that information. It sometimes makes people very uncomfortable. People will ask how many children I have, and I always start with 4, and I let them know that, Brandon passed away, and you see people becoming very uncomfortable. The thing that I feel is important is that there isn't anyone or very few people left in our area or many other areas that have not been affected by opioid use, misuse, and overdose. So that's something that I find very important to just keep talking about because it hasn't always been easy. There is definitely still a stigma attached to it, and I can tell you that while Brandon was struggling in addiction, it was very difficult for me to talk about.
Yeah. No, so while he was struggling in addiction, you were well aware of it?
I was well aware of it eventually, not when his addiction started. I mean, I think that he struggled longer than I had realized. I spent a lot of time kind of making excuses or reasoning it away, normal teenage behavior, just kind of dabbling, experimenting. And that was mostly with alcohol use or marijuana use that I was aware of. His addiction spiraled, but when it did, he was living on his own. So I started to notice different behaviors and signs, and I realized that we had moved into something deeper than I was aware of. So when I did realize it, then it went really quickly. I was able to get him into treatment. He completed a 30-day treatment program, and when he came home, he quickly relapsed. And then after that, unfortunately, he started acting out in criminal behaviors that he had to steal and do other things to support his addiction. So he ended up wrapped up in the criminal justice system.
Which obviously didn't help him.
No, it did not help him. He went through 1 county jail and 2 state prisons. He then was released to a rehab facility and then a CCC, and eventually he lost his life while he was living in the CCC, which is a correctional halfway house.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't understand that he was in a facility when this happened.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. Mm-hmm.
So can you share with us what is life afterwards? I mean, I'm a mother, and I know that there are very many mothers watching this.
Sure.
Some of us who have children who are in this similar situation, and some who just are, are removed from it.
Right.
But what happens to the mother? What happens to the people left behind?
It looks different for everybody, and that's the one thing I want to stress. Grief does not look the same for everyone. I'm a mother of 4 sons. So
do you only have sons?
Yes. Yes, I have 4 sons. The ones left behind, Mason is 22, Owen is 21, and Cole is 18. And the journey for each one of them looked very different. The older 2 boys really struggled with losing their brother, and they acted out in different ways than my younger son. He was a little more sensitive and kind of held it more within, where the other 2 boys sort of acted out. And they did use marijuana and alcohol to kind of cope with getting through the loss of their brother.
Did that freak you out? I mean, what?
Yes. I don't even need to pause to say yes.
Yeah,
that really freaked me out.
Just scare the hell,
Yes, because I was so fearful that we were taking the same journey.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that happens afterwards for me, I became afraid of the world.
I can understand why.
Yes,
right.
I was afraid that I was going to lose another child. I was fearful that, they would end up locked up like their brother. I was fearful that I would never be able to get back to a normal. And I am still working on that normal. It's not necessarily here yet, but I can say that I am finding joy in life again. So you can get to that point. It just takes time and healing.
Yeah. So what type of healing, process have you gone through? What has your journey been like?
Mm-hmm. So for me, it is sharing my story. It is doing work in the community or otherwise to share my story. So I joined the Opioid Coalition.
Right, the SOS Berks.
Yes.
Right? So we sit on the SOS Berks task force together.
Yes. And so I've been able to use my voice somewhat, make the community more aware, attend events, and just even be in a room with other people that really care about this topic and issue and fighting to end it. So that's been amazing. I also started doing some part-time work as a behavioral health tech at White Deer Run. So I am working with people who are seeking recovery in rehab. So
White Deer Run is a recovery center?
Yes, it's a rehab facility, a 30-day rehab facility. So I get to work, do direct service with others who are struggling in addiction. So that's been amazing. And able to share my story even with them at times where it's appropriate. Sometimes, they all have people who love them, and hearing my story kind of brings that back around and brings some self-awareness for them. But it's also very cathartic for me, because I think I said to you earlier, there's many, many Brandons there, and Brandon was an amazing human being, and to see them working towards recovery and getting themselves back to life, that really makes my heart happy.
Well, you're an amazing human being.
Oh, thank you.
You really are. Your strength is just inspirational. I mean,
thank you.
It really is. And I know that you are not by trade, so to speak, a social worker,
no.
Right? So you come out of
criminal justice.
Criminal justice, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, as do I. And you moved into this different type of. So do you think you would have moved so wholeheartedly into this new area of career choice?
I think that I spent 8 years working at children and youth, and this was before Brandon's struggles or addiction, or I was aware of it anyway. And I can say that I felt the punitive.
Yes.
I felt it was more punitive than restorative, and that was something that I always wanted to get back to. I did an internship at the Domestic Violence Center in Lancaster County, and that was very powerful for me, and that's where I've landed again. So I feel like I am now assisting and helping and walking with people rather than punishing them for where they're at.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely get it.
So I'm not sure that my direction would have taken me necessarily to drug and alcohol. but it always was to get back on the restorative end of it.
Yeah. So tell me, you talked a little bit about the word stigma, and and they say that that is really the problem with our opioid epidemic is dealing with the stigma. And your willingness to share the story, though, is what flattens that stigma out.
Yes.
It's just it can happen to anybody in any family. And yet you have used it, I think, admirably to help other Brandons,
Yes.
which is just it truly is an inspiration.
Thank you.
So we're going to wrap up in a second, but I just what's the one thing that you want other mothers? What could you can you tell a mother who is listening to this and saying, I see it coming,
I think the thing that I have found very helpful and useful is there's other mothers out there who have gone through this. They are there to support one another. I know that I have been able to connect with, through friends, family, community members, other mothers who are struggling with the exact thing that I was struggling with 4 years ago. So don't be afraid to lean on others, to tell your story, to take advice from people who have already been through it. You won't, again, every journey is different, so not every piece of information will be useful, but you will always be able to glean something that will be helpful, and maybe that just reach out to others. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because everybody needs help at one time or another.
I think that's a great message to end up, that everybody needs help. And if you're a mom who is struggling, you can reach out. You can even reach, I'm sure
Yes,
you would be more
absolutely.
than happy to, Stacey would be more than happy to share her story with you more. But for now, we thank Stacey for coming in and sharing just a little part of her story and the journey that she's on.
Thank you, Annarose.
I thank you, and thank you for watching.